Howdy. Part 3 on the ascension ladder. So, now that we're a selfish old brat throwing our tantrums, and we've paid attention to ourselves, and we've wrote some junk down, we're going to remember how to read for a minute and take that list and make sure you're making notes on the side to remind you what the situations were that triggered these feelings. And you're going to observe if there were other people involved or it was something personally that was triggered in you in the situation. So, what you're going to do is you're going to take a step back, pretend you're someone else, and look at that situation. Okay, you're going to recall the feeling, you're going to look at your notes, and you're going to see, like, well, how could this gone a lot better? What would be the ideal way that I wanted that to go? Okay, especially when it involves other people. If it's a response that triggered something in you that caused some kind of emotion or issue to erupt, how would you have preferred for that to have transpired instead of the way it went? Okay, so when you compare, because your next step is comparison, when you compare how you wanted it to go, how versus how it actually transpired, you can identify the ideal mindset and the ideal train of thought that you're actually desiring. Okay, that's your true character indicator. Okay, so when you study over this paper, over these notes, from where you're paying attention to yourself and those around you, as far as like the events that have occurred, because at this point you're still not supposed to care during these exercises about the people around you. But during this period, when you do are forced to interact and it makes you feel some type of way that you're making notes on, compare how you wanted it to be versus how it was, and list the differences in between both situations. Okay, so if somebody was angry and you wanted them to be calm, you're going to go back to our favorite question: why? Okay, that should help you identify the value as far as like the virtue, the morality, the character that is missing in the equation that we're searching for in you. Okay, so if someone was angry and you wanted them to be calm, or someone was inconsiderate and you wanted them to be kind, that will give you an indicator of why you are particularly seeking that. And when you identify this, it should give you the intensity level of how strong you're desiring that. So as we go over this list one by one, you'll notice the values of each thing because you're going to write these down as far as like the differential of why you wished it would have been a different way it went down. This is going to show you key components of what you're missing in your interactions and in your life at this time. Okay, and you're going to write these values down. Okay, once you write these values down, this gives you something to seek for. You're going to make these mindful priorities in the way that you interact internally because you're going to apply these missing values to yourself as well. The hand of consideration and kindness and compassion and love that you wish other people would show you, you are required to get anything out of this to start showing that to yourself. And there's not a lot of like psychic folks out there. So for the most part, your thoughts are your own. So you're allowed to be nice to yourself. You're allowed to work stuff out in your head. You really are. And a lot of the time, especially like when I first started on this ladder, I would actually get embarrassed, even though it's just in my head. Like I would get embarrassed with myself of like, oh God, I am addressing shortcomings and things that I didn't really want to face before. Because what we're technically doing is we're turning the camera around because right now you're staring out of your eyeballs, and we're going to go to the back of our head. And especially when we see what's missing that we're actually, because it gives us something to pursue. A lot of us have problems and we have no clue of like one, where they're coming from, and two, how to solve it. Well, at this point in stage 3, we're identifying like why we feel the way we do. Then we're already at the point where we're getting to know ourselves. And then when we make this comparison, it also begins to show us what we're seeking and what we're missing. Okay, this is going to go more in depth later on, but for now, since this is baby steps, this is a good starting point kind of deal. So the values and virtues and the morality that you're missing, the things that edify, and edify just means to nurture and restore vitality, to feed, to make better, to quicken, if you, for all you Bible scholars out there, to instill life in you, kind of thing. So when you actively start applying these to how you treat yourself on the inside, you can then begin to seek and apply those to the outside. And, you know, we've all heard like you reap what you sow. Sometimes you can't really plant stuff in soil that won't take it. There's going to be people that you interact with in circumstances and situations, especially since the world just breeds adversity, and that you're not going to be able to apply these. So you're going to search and pick your battles. Pick your battles to where you can apply those things, to where you can begin to get some edification out of the circumstances around you. So even if you go to plant and do the correct thing in a situation, and at that point there's no reciprocation, there is still growth and progress happening internally from you applying the same things that you're seeking. If people are impatient with you, be patient with them. It, if people are angry with you, remain calm with them. Especially like if people are angry with you and they're asinine and they're sarcastic. My favorite thing in the world is not necessarily silence, but understanding, kind of thing. It's because if you remain silent in a situation, this is off topic, but if you remain silent in a situation, they think that's submission and that they're winning. Instead, turn it around on them and just be like, "Are you okay? Is there something I can do for you? You seem upset. Like, I don't really feel like this is a genuine reaction you're having. You know, do you want to talk about it? Like, show concern for them. That will trip them the hell out. It is my favorite activity in the world to take the high and mighty and then just coddle the shit out of them because they're trying to be a tyrant and a warrior and just be on fire. And I've got ice cream and a lollipop and being like, "Do you want to talk about it, Tiger? You know, how you doing, Bubby?" Just the satisfaction, not to mention that makes them feel seen, and that helps to like establish a connection to where, you know, both parties can actually make some progress. But at the same time too, especially at this stage, for stage 3, there's still, you know, a good amount of petty alive and well. So enjoy it while it lasts, because eventually we're going to get rid of that too, unless it's just desperately called for. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and it takes a lot to get me petty, but when I do, good lord, it's so sweet. But this is stage 3. It's not as long as the other videos because this is one that you really have to put some thought into, because it really starts to show you what you're missing and why. And another exercise you can apply to this is, I want you to meditate on each one that's missing and why that's important to you. And that should trigger another chain of why and give you another adder to chase, to begin showing like the components that we need to start identifying and getting in our lives and in ourselves, because the first person that's going to give these to you is you. You can seek them on the outside, but like you got to give them to yourself first, because like you can't necessarily give what you don't have. If I ain't got a bottle of water to give you, there's no way I can give you a bottle of water, kind of thing. You know, it's the same thing as like speaking Spanish, for example. If I don't speak Spanish, how the hell am I going to understand you? It's the same thing with you. If you don't speak Spanish, how the hell are you going to tell anybody else? So you have to apply it to yourself first. And if you don't know that, there will be a whole separate series that I'm going to establish with this, as far as like what emotional capabilities we have as far as our spiritual dashboard, and how they apply not only to our inner mechanics but to our outer world, and then the sociology behind that. But work y'all's papers, and I will see you tomorrow. Today has been rough. I love you guys. See you later.